Hi guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to talk about the milestone project number 1. This is going to be a movie collection app, and in this video we're going to give you the briefing for the project as well as a few hints that you can use when you're developing the project. We're not going to be completing the project in this video. That is for you to do before we show you how we would do it ourselves. So everything's covered in this short presentation. So the requirements for the project are normally defined as user stories. A user story is a phrase in the format, as a user I would like to be able to do something so that I can achieve something. So the first user story is that as a user I'd like to be able to add new movies to my collection so that I can keep track of them. Pretty straightforward. The next one is that as a user I'd like to be able to list all the movies in my collection so that I can see what movies I already have. So these are two different things that our users should be able to do with our application. Something important here is that these user stories don't define the implementation, whether you should use databases or lists and so forth. It just says that a user would like to be able to do these things. Finally, as a user, I'd like to be able to find a movie by using the movie title so that I can locate a specific movie easily when the collections grow. And so that is going to allow us to do some searching. So how are we going to implement this project? First of all, we have to decide where we're going to store movies in the code. Again, that's whether we're going to be using a database, whether we're going to be putting things in a dictionary or in a list or variables, stuff like that. So where is the data that our program relies on gonna go? Then we have to decide what data we want to store for each movie. Whether that's going to be a dictionary representing some movie properties, maybe it's a tuple with just the properties themselves, and so on. Once we've decided these two things, we're ready to start implementing. And the first step is going to be to decide what the user is going to see when they interact with our application. So we're going to create a menu, and we're going to let the users pick an option out of the menu. Then we're going to implement each requirement in turn to add, list, and find movies, each as a separate function. That's how we're going to implement this. And finally, we also have to make sure that users can terminate the program, and we're going to make sure that when they type the Q key, the program ends. So these implementation tasks are something that you should decide when you're starting a new project. Just broad strokes. It doesn't have to be extremely specific. Here it is quite specific because the project is quite small, but it just gives you some guidance regarding what you want to do and in what order. Let's start with the first one, where to store movies. Normally, for almost any project, you would use a database, but we haven't looked at how to do that, so we're going to store them in a Python list. Putting things into a list is easy. You can use append to add things to a list, and you can go over the list using a loop very easily. But the problem is that movies get deleted from the collection when the app terminates. That is going to be a temporary compromise that we have to make, but later on when we learn more about databases, we will be able to overcome this. So for now, once we've decided to store things in a list, our code essentially looks like this. We've got a movies variable, and that's equal to an empty list. So what are we going to store for each movie? You can decide here how you want to represent a movie in your code. For example, you could create a dictionary that has keys, where each key, for example, the movie title or the movie director, is a key in the dictionary and has a value associated with it. You could use a tuple where the first value is the movie title, the second value is the movie director, and so forth. That's totally up to you. Just make a decision now so that you can then code relying on this to be the structure of your data. In this project, we're going to be creating a dictionary for each movie, and in the dictionary, we're going to store the movie title, director, and release year. So we're going to do something like this. We're going to grab the title, director, and year from the user using the input function. And then we're going to append to the movies list a dictionary. You can see the curly braces there. This is a dictionary with 3 keys, the title, director, and year. And each one has whatever the user typed. This is just a bit of a hint. It's not quite going to look exactly like this because we're going to be using functions and all that stuff in our code, but just to give you an idea of how we might go about this. The third and final hint is we have to show the user a menu. And for that, we have to get the user's input regarding what they want to do. And then we want to run a loop and get their input again at the end so that we can start the loop again with some new user input. So we might do something like this. Here I'm defining a menu prompt variable that tells the user what the options are. So they can enter A to add a movie, L to see your movies, F to find a movie by title, or Q to quit. Then we get the user's input in this line. And while the input is not equal to Q, that means that we want to run this loop. We want to continue asking the user what they want to do, and we want to do something with that input. And at the bottom of this loop, we ask the user again for their input. If they type Q, the loop terminates, and we stop the application. And if they type something else, the loop continues, and then we do whatever it is that they selected. We are doing this with if statements. So as long as they didn't enter Q, we're going to jump in here, and then if what they entered was A, then we're going to do something. If they entered L, we're going to do something else, and if they enter F, we're going to do something else. Finally, if it's none of those, we're going to print that this was an unknown command. The pass keyword, by the way, is a new thing that we are learning now, and it just means do nothing. But Python requires an indented block underneath an if statement. You can see that this has more indentation. So that's why we have to put something in the block. And pass is the perfect candidate just to tell us that we want to do something here later, we haven't implemented it yet. So you can use that in your code as well. Now that we've got this, the next step is to implement each requirement in turn. So add movies, list the movies, and find a movie. So let's go into the code editor in the next video and allow users to do this. But before that, you should try this yourself. In this video, we've linked the incomplete app in the resources section of this lecture. You can take a look at that code and use it as your starter code. It's just the code that we've shown you in this presentation. Once you've tried that and once you're ready, move on to the next video and we'll show you how we would implement this project. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.